How's everybody feeling out there so far? Everybody, no mental breakdowns yet today? Yes, mental breakdowns, somewhere in between?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Good deal. As long as I don't use that word selling or listing, we're fine, right?
Well, yesterday was a shit show.
You're not lying. Khadijah, I'm just trying to like make some comments and it was just, Lord. By the way, I said y'all couldn't drink. I didn't say I couldn't drink. I drank last night. I was like, Lord bless. After I was like, I just gotta have a nightcap. This is just so I just downed like 3 bottles of tequila and I was fine after that. So
Not a material factor what's in my cup.
that's right. Doesn't have to be disclosed. Technically, you're not an agent, right? Not yet. So you don't have to disclose.
I'm just glad we're having the class in the winter, not during the summertime when like a lot is happening outside.
Yeah. There's not too much going on right now. That's right. It's cold.
I don't have to have my urge to ride my bike, so yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Motorcycle, that is.
It's a good time to do it. Just pass it on the first try, so that way you don't have to do it in spring, you know?
I definitely intend to.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. I like it. I have heard that before. And whenever you kind of look like James Corden. Yeah, a little. I've also, depending on, how crazy I'm acting, gotten Jack Black from some people. So especially when my hair is longer and my beard's a little crazier, sure. I also just have that face, I think, because almost every class somebody's like, oh my God, you look like this one guy on YouTube or this guy on this, and somebody will send me a link and I'll have to pull it up. I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see it, I could see it. Yeah. It's just my face. This is what it is. Folks, I think we're feeling pretty good. I think we're feeling pretty good about these material facts things. So far, let me ask you a question. I'm going to speed up a little bit. I always take it slow to make sure that we're not going to have any mental breakdowns. And I think we're good, and so we can kind of pick it up just a little bit. So here's the question, and I'm not going to worry about doing the the format again because you can just talk to me. A real estate agent who is representing a seller in a transaction notices a water stain on the ceiling of the home. What is the best course of action for the broker? I'm not going to give you options. Just think about it for a second. What's the best course of action?
It needs to be disclosed. Yep, point it out.
It needs...
Everybody needs to
I
know.
would say ask the seller for more information.
Both.
Yeah.
There you go. I would inquire with the seller. Hey, what's that from? Tell me a little bit about it. And then regardless of what the seller says, I would disclose that there was a water stain, right? If it's an active leak, disclose that. If they say there's no issue, disclose that you can't verify whether there is an issue or not, and then there is a water stain. That's exactly right. Yeah. Now, when we talk about the disclosure, this is what happens when a broker gets the disclosure wrong. I don't want to necessarily say gets it wrong. Let's just say when you don't follow the rules, when things don't happen the way that they're supposed to. And I already told you what the outcome is because we looked at the License on Commission rulebook. You're subject to disciplinary action, right? Subject to disciplinary action. So when we say something that's not true, but we take it as truth, that is what we call a misrepresentation, right? You've said something that's not true. An omission is when you say nothing at all. Let me warn you about something that you can see test-wise, okay? Based on what you know of material facts right now, I'm going to use an example here, okay? Erica is a listing agent, and Erica knows that a pending zoning change is happening that could adversely affect the property. And when I call up Erica as a buyer's agent, right, and I say, Erica, any zoning changes or other issues that I need to know about as a buyer's agent for my buyer? And Erica says, no. Do you think Erica has committed a misrepresentation or an omission?
Willful omission.
Both.
Well, we have to give it one or the other.
misrepresentation because she knew and judged a lot
I say
about it?
omission.
Omission.
No, I was wrong. Willful misrepresentation.
Mackenzie nailed it, folks. Folks, she said something. The word no was something, and it was untrue. So when I asked Erica and she said, no, there's no issue, she knew and she lied. She did a willful misrepresentation. This is one of the biggest areas that students get confused on trying to identify these on the test. Because you think that she didn't tell me, so it's an omission. No, she told me something. It was just a false statement. You cannot commit an omission if you say something. An omission can only happen when you say nothing. Does that make sense for everybody? So when you're getting into these, remember that every single one of these material facts issues is either a misrepresentation or an omission, of which they could either be willful or negligent. Willful or negligent. Willful means intentional. Negligent means you didn't do your job right. So my best recommendation is always break them down piece by piece. And there's always some telltale words. Such and such knew, knows, discovered, right? That tells you willful because they knew. Doesn't say, omission. Says, writes, discloses, misrepresentation, correct? Things like didn't verify, didn't know, tells you negligence. And if you say nothing, it's an omission. So you're always going to have to identify. And that's another reason why I pointed out that comment section. Folks, there are examples, multiple examples in the License Law and Commission Rulebook on what the commission perceives as each one of these. Now, we may not use the exact examples in our test, but do you think there's a chance that the Real Estate Commission may use their own examples in the state level licensing test? I'd say it's very possible. So when we're talking about misrepresentations, remember, you're saying something false, okay? That's all a misrepresentation is. You said something false. You provided incorrect information. Do be careful, though, because while it is not always intentional, it is not always, you're not in any less trouble if it's accidental. Let me go back to that HVAC, okay? If you are sitting at a listing appointment and it is hot as Hades in the house, is that a pretty good indicator that there's probably something wrong with the AC? And then you go on and you ask the seller, hey, is there anything wrong with the AC? And they're sitting there with a wet towel on their face, sweating just like you are. And they say, no, it works great. And then you go and you tell the public that it works great. That is negligent misrepresentation because you relied on unreliable information and then disseminated it to the public as truth. Does that make sense? Do you know that it doesn't work? No, but there's a sneaking suspicion. But you said something as truth without verifying. There you go, Lisa. No, there's nothing wrong with the AC. It's just something right with the heat, right? The heat works amazing. That's exactly right. Oh, like I said, if your client's a lizard, maybe. Right? Maybe. So, misrepresentation is you say something not true. Omission is you say nothing at all but had an obligation to say something. Willful is you did it on purpose, knowing that you did these things. Negligence is you didn't do it on purpose, but you shouldn't have done it because your expertise in your trade should have dictated that you knew better. The roaches like that hot. I'm sure they do. So this is just another example, and I'm not going to go too crazy on these. Samara is a provisional broker who takes her first ever listing. She tours the property with the seller, but is a bit too nervous to ask the seller about the obvious crack in the foundation wall. A buyer who did not have a home inspection purchases the property and later finds foundation settlement issues. This supplemental piece, it says it doesn't really matter here why Samar failed to mention the foundation issues. The fact that she failed to communicate the issue is an omission, right? She saw it. She didn't know that there was an issue, but she knew that those cracks existed, okay? So this would be a willful omission. She knew the cracks existed. She failed to communicate that to anybody. Willful omission. And that's exactly how we break these all down. It's either willful or negligent, misrepresentation or omission. Erica, are home inspections optional but obviously encouraged? Absolutely. There's no requirement to have a home inspection, but it would be a stupid idea to not get one. So when we're looking at this example, okay, based on what I've told you, okay, Josie is a licensed salesperson who is talking to a listing. Is taking a listing and walks through the property, making note of all issues for disclosure purposes. Josie does not notice any sign of electrical issues, even though there are some spots of melted plastic on receptacle covers. Months later, after the buyer closes on the property, the buyer discovers that the electrical wiring of several circuits is overloaded. What would be the best way to describe this issue from Josie's perspective?
Negligent omission.
Misreputation. Negligent omission.
So,
Isn't it misrepresentation because he didn't notice it, right? If he noticed it, it would be omission.
well, remember, noticing it, when we say they know or they noticed, that has to do with whether it was willful or negligent, not whether it was misrepresentation or omission. How you relay the information is what has to do with it, whether it's misrepresentation or omission. So, Josie does not notice any sign of electrical issues, even though there are some spots of melted plastic on receptacle covers. That is an indication, but not a guarantee. So they saw something, right? They knew of something that was potentially a material fact, even though it couldn't definitively be pointed out as electrical. So they know something. And then what do they do with that information?
They omitted it, so it's an omission.
It's an omission. Folks, this is a really tricky one because anything, it doesn't have to be definitively HVAC issues, definitively electrical issues, definitively anything, right? The water spot, we don't know if it's a water intrusion or not that's active, but would you still need to disclose it?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. You're right. I'm so sorry. The verbiage confused me because it says Josie does not notice any sign of electrical issues, even though there are some spots of melted plastic. My interpretation was she saw the melted plastic, but didn't think electrical issues. So let me amend that. If she didn't notice the melted plastic, that is negligence. You're all correct. I apologize. There needed to be like a comma there, I think, for me to, I just pushed it all together. My apologies.
We read it twice because I was confused because I thought that it was negligence. I thought I missed something.
No, I apologize because the way that I read it was she saw the plastic, but didn't assume it was electrical issue. So that's my mistake. You're right. She didn't see the plastic. Negligence, right? There was a sign for her to see, okay? But she didn't see it. That would be negligence. And she said nothing. Okay, she didn't say that there was no electrical issues. She just didn't disclose anything. Everybody agree with that? So y'all were correct. Negligent omission. I apologize. Yeah, always.
Sorry, I have one more question on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with the negligence, but I don't know if we're just reading into it that she said nothing versus she said there was no problem with the electrical, but it was found later. If she communicated that there was no problem, then it would be negligent misrepresentation, correct?
Correct. 100% correct. Saying nothing is an omission. Communicating that there was no issue would be a misrepresentation. Absolutely correct. What you got, Samantha? Oh, you're muted.
So the fact that she didn't see it is what makes it negligent.
Right, because that would be a patent thing, right? It's something that she could have discovered, something that she could have seen, but she didn't. So that's the issue there. And I apologize, folks, because I read it wrong. I'm just so excitable trying to go through this thing, and I just read it and how I interpreted it, which is probably just something that needs clarity with the way that this is kind of pieced together. What you got, Ann?
I don't know if I missed this, but so if she had noticed it, it would have been a willful omission?
Yes.
Okay.
If she had seen the melted plastic, that would be one of those things that should be a material fact. Yet again, best course of action, inquiry with the seller. Even if the seller tells you nothing, you have an obligation to disclose that you noticed melted plastic on the receptacles. So it would be a willful omission if she had noticed the plastic, which is what I was going for first, because I read it as she noticed the melted plastic. So I apologize. Y'all were correct. Let's do another one. I'll tell you what, these examples are exceptionally tricky, and I sometimes will use different ones, but let's take this one a little slower and break it down to make sure that we're on the same page first and foremost. William just purchased a home in Raleigh that was listed by Zach of Capital Properties, LLC. Zach's MLS listing mentions that the property is serviced by city water and sewer, even though Zach has discussed with the seller that there is a well on the property which provides drinking water. What do you think for this one?
Willful misrep.
Negligent misrepresentation.
So let me help you read into this a little bit more, okay? Just purchased a home that was listed by Zach of Capital Properties LLC. Zach's MLS listing mentions is stating something, okay? That it is serviced by city water and city sewer. So he made a statement saying it is serviced by city water and city sewer. Well, Zach has discussed with the seller. There's a well on the property which provides drinking water. The water comes from a well. Zach has had this discussion, so Zach knows the water is well water.
Number one.
But says, well, no, you can throw that one out because it's that too, but that's not something that the Real Estate Commission's going to be looking for on the test, right? It is, he knows there's an issue, right? He knows that it's serviced by a well water, but he says it's serviced by city water. Knows tells you it's willful, says something untrue, says it's a misrepresentation. So, willful misrepresentation for this one. What you got, Samantha?
Could you just give an example of negligent misrepresentation? I think I'm just getting them backwards.
So we will get into a section when we're dealing with things that we have to do as agents on residential square footage guidelines. And so the Real Estate Commission holds real estate brokers accountable for measuring homes. That is actually a skill that you'll learn in post-licensing. But sometimes we're allowed to hire people to measure. Well, Samantha, if I was a listing agent and I was telling the public what the square footage of a home was, and I was too lazy to actually measure the home myself, so I just looked at the previous MLS listing when it was listed last, and it said 1,800 square feet. So I take 1,800 square feet and I put that in my MLS listing. I made a claim that I publicly put out there that I'm saying the home is 1,800 square feet. But my negligence is pulling it from an unreliable source. So when it turns out that it's actually only 1,600 square feet, I am guilty of negligent misrepresentation. I pulled information from an unreliable source. I didn't do my job right. But I still made a claim to the public. Just like Zach here. Zach knew that it was serviced by a well. Zach is now willfully doing it, right? Difference is, I didn't know, but I didn't do my job right. Zach knew and didn't say things correctly. You got to be very careful because sometimes there's a fine line. When we are thinking willful misrepresentation, you are a liar, liar, pants on fire. Okay? That's the best way to remember it. You know something to be false, but you say it anyway. You are a liar, liar, pants on fire. Zach knows that it's well water. Zach lies and says that it's city water. Negligence comes from not knowing when you should have known, right? Let me give you another example here. If there is a major highway coming through and the listing agent doesn't know about it, but it is highly publicized. They don't know, they never say anything to the public. What do you think they'd be guilty of?
Negligent omission.
Negligent omission. Because they honestly didn't know, but it was in the scope of their job to know. Because it was a highly publicized road project. Does that make sense? What you got, Nashaya?
So I think that I know that I grasped the concept of willful omission and negligent omission and the whole concept. But the last question kind of confused me a little bit. If you don't mind going back.
Sure.
So if Josie does not notice any sign of electrical issues, even though there are some spots of melted plastic on the receptacle covers, wouldn't omission is when you know something but you don't say anything?
No, omission is when you say nothing but you had an obligation to. Remember, there are two separate categories, and that's what I said earlier. Willful means you knew something. Negligent means you should have known something.
Right.
They're independent of each other. That's why I say take it piece by piece. Okay? So when we're talking about misrepresentation versus omission, a misrepresentation is saying something untrue.
Okay.
An omission is saying nothing. So when you look here,
Would it be misrepresentation if she checked off that everything with the electrical system was good and then later on something was wrong?
now here's the thing. Understand who we're talking about, Nashaya.
I'm listening.
No, I want you to tell me, who are we talking about?
Josie,
And who is Josie?
she's a real estate agent.
She's a real estate agent. Who is checking boxes on a disclosure?
Oh.
Josie didn't check off anything. There's no disclosure that we have to actually fill out as brokers, as licensees, as salespeople. There's just obligations to disclose. So, folks, follow along with me here. Josie has a license. When we're dealing with these things, what you're looking for is, was it willful or negligent, and was it an omission or misrepresentation? And you got to keep them separate. When we say willful, that means intentional. When we say negligent, that means, like Becky said, careless or didn't know how to do your job right. Understand that whether you had the information or not is irrelevant if the commission says that you should have had the information. Can we all agree that these melted spots on some receptacle things could have been discovered? Then they are patent. Ergo, she had an obligation to discover and disclose them. So it was her negligence in not doing a thorough viewing or walk through the property. If she had seen them and said nothing, that would have been willful. But she didn't see them, but she should have seen them. And so omission is, I said nothing, but I had an obligation to. Let me explain the last piece of this to make sure that we're all on the same page. There is never an obligation of anybody to ask. So even in that scenario, right? Nashaya, you are the listing agent. And you know about a major zoning change coming through the area. Because it is a material fact and you know it, you have to disclose it. Even if you didn't know it, if you were expected to know, you would have to disclose it. So there's no obligation for me as a buyer's agent to call up Nashaya and be like, hey, Nashaya, is there anything that I need to know about? At which point she'd be like, you got me. I was trying to hide it. You got me. I'm going to say, it doesn't work that way. If it's a material fact, you had an obligation to disclose it, whether you knew it or not. The only thing that changes is whether or not we consider it willful or negligence. Let me give you an actual real estate commission interpretation. Here you go. Going back to that comment section, license law and rulebook comments. And I told you, if you come down and you find this section, okay, the real estate commission breaks it down as such. Okay, here's the 4 categories that I just told you about. But if you look, willful misrepresentation. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. This occurs when a licensee who has actual knowledge of a material fact deliberately misinforms a buyer, seller, tenant, or landlord concerning such fact. A misrepresentation is also considered to be willful when a licensee who does not have actual knowledge of a material material to the transaction provides incorrect information concerning. That takes it a little step further. And then here's an example, okay? So this is a willful misrepresentation. An agent knows that a listed house has a severe problem with water intrusion in the crawl space during heavy rains. Okay, that knows makes it willful. In response to a question from a prospective buyer who is being shown the house during dry weather, the agent states that there is no water drainage problem. They lied. They knew of an issue, they lied and said there wasn't one. Okay, willful misrepresentation. Negligent misrepresentation. This occurs when a licensee unintentionally misinforms a buyer, seller, tenant, or landlord concerning a material fact, either because the licensee does not have actual knowledge of the fact, because the licensee has incorrect information, or because of a mistake by the licensee. All of the above. So, this goes back to the reasonableness standard. If a reasonably prudent licensee should reasonably have known the truth of the matter that was misrepresented, then the licensee may be guilty of a negligent misrepresentation. An example of which, pick a shorter one. Oh my God, they're all so long. Ooh. How about this one? An agent has previously sold several lots in a subdivision under development, and all those lots passed a soil suitability test for an on-site septic system. The agent then sells lot 35 without checking as to whether this lot satisfies the soil test. However, the agent informs the buyer that lot 35 will support an on-site septic system, when in fact the contrary is true. They used past information to make an assumption about something. They made a claim that was not true. That would be negligence. Everybody with me? Then it goes on to willful omission. This occurs when a licensee has actual knowledge of a material fact and a duty to disclose that fact to a buyer, seller, tenant, or landlord, but deliberately fails to disclose such fact. So an agent knows that a zoning change is pending that would adversely affect the value of a listed property, but fails to disclose such information to a prospective buyer. The agent has committed a willful omission regardless of the agent's agency status or the role in the transaction. And then one more. Negligent omission. This occurs when a licensee does not have actual knowledge of a material fact and consequently does not disclose the fact, but a reasonably prudent licensee should reasonably have known that fact. So an example here, let me try to find a not so crazy one. They're all pretty crazy. Listing a house, the listing agent is told by the seller that one area of the roof leaks badly when it rains, but the moisture so far is being contained in the attic. The listing agent forgets. I mean, actually forgets, because please don't get confused that forgetting holds any less weight. You're still in trouble. But if they actually forgot that the seller told them that and didn't disclose, that would be a negligence thing, right? They were told, they forgot, they were supposed to disclose it, they didn't, right? There's an example. And there's more examples in here. Here's the thing I'll tell you. If you're still lost, look through these other examples in your studying. Because I can promise you, this is one of those things that you either get it immediately or you don't. And so sometimes it takes some extra information, right? A little bit of deeper digging. Because it can get confusing. Was this an omission or a misrepresentation, right? But there's key words that help you. Knows, discovers, is aware of, tells us willful, says, displays, markets, tells us misrepresentation, right? They've disseminated it to the public. Everybody with me? Oops. So let me talk about a few more things going with this, and we're gonna get as far as we can today. Obviously, we're not gonna get to 3.4, which was the goal today, but that's okay. We'll play catch up. This is very important stuff, and because we're starting with this, it typically takes even longer because I have to give you these mini lessons of other concepts. So when we say puffing, okay, not like what Snoop Dogg does, okay, not that kind of puffing. Puffing is an exaggeration in marketing. It's not the same as a misrepresentation. Depends on how you do it. Let me give you an example. The best view of the ocean. Prettiest house on the golf course. Best backyard in the neighborhood, right? These are all kind of slight exaggerations in marketing, and they could be subjective, right? Arguably to somebody, these may be true. So hyping stuff up a little bit is not misrepresentation. Now, please don't misunderstand, folks. If you have a house and you say something like, with a little tender love and care, right? Some TLC, this home could be perfect, walk out your back door onto the beach, and it's one of those Rodanthe houses that just fell into the ocean and it washed up on the shore and you're trying to sell it, okay, that'd be a misrepresentation. That's just lying. Marquita says, if we don't finish the objectives for today, will we start where we left? We will always start where we left off. I will never I will never just leave gaps. We will play catch up. You'll be fine. That's how this course goes. Sometimes it takes longer in other concepts, and sometimes we go faster in others. So we're not gonna skip anything, I promise. So let me tell you what else is not a material fact. Okay? And this was listed. If you go back to that comment section, this is listed verbatim in the comment section. There are certain things that we call stigmatized properties, meaning society has branded them as undesirable. There you go, Keith. This is one of the most beautiful. Lost in the Emerald Isle. That's right. Stigmatized means branded as undesirable. Like haunted, or if somebody died in the property, somebody was sick in the property, some side of criminal activity, something like this. We can all agree that most people may not like the idea of living in a house where these things have happened. But you need to understand something very important. Per the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, these are not material facts. Remember, a material fact is just something, if you know it or reasonably should have known it, needs to be disclosed to the public. Everybody. So let me translate this. When we say these are not material facts, that means you are not in trouble for not disclosing these to the public. You have no obligation to disclose these to the public. Does everybody understand this? So when we say haunted or someone died or someone was sick in the property, oh, is that a movie, Anne?
Yeah, it's like the woman who there's a Netflix series made out of it. I'm sure people on here have seen it. But I'm blanking on the guy's name. He was up for election as mayor of Durham, and then went under this really public trial for having allegedly pushed his wife down the stairs in this house that's in my neighborhood. Anyway,
I didn't know that.
fact or not, but it's a crazy, crazy story, and I drive by that house all the time, and I'm like, good luck selling that house.
I was so confused. I'm like, the staircase? What is it? The stair? I'm like,
It is.
I'll have to look at it. Yeah. So let me expand on this a little bit more. You've got to be careful. The way this is going to manifest itself in test questions is all of the following would be examples of material facts except, right? And so a haunted house is not a material fact. Someone dying in the property is not a material fact. Someone sick in the property, not a material fact. Let me tell you another thing that's not a material fact, okay? With sex offenders. Whether or not there are sex offenders in the neighborhood or in the house currently. But let me tell you something. Do you think that this is something that your clients may want to know?
Yes.
So let me give you two pieces of information. One for real world and one for test taking purposes. If we ask you if a haunted house, a site of criminal activity, a sex offender, anything like that is a material fact, the answer is no. But do understand that if a client ever asks you, just because it's not a material fact does not mean you can lie. And there's nothing stopping you from pointing your clients to the sex offender registry. There is a registry. Now, folks, it is testable for you to know that the law that actually created the sex offender database is called Megan's Law. Okay? It's called Megan's Law. Named after a girl that was abducted by a sexual predator. Okay? It's called Megan's Law. So you can send your clients to the sex offender database and tell them to do their research. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, I will tell you one other thing that always comes up in the material, and it's not in these slides, but it's in every book and every other slides that I've ever worked with, so I want to provide this information to you. When we're dealing with death in the property, understand that if somebody's interested, they can Google the address, right? And this is real world. The question that you're going to be focusing on for testing is it a material fact? And the answer is no. But if they're interested, they can Google the property. If a septuple homicide happened in that house, it's going to pop up on the Google. Please understand that your great-great-grandpappy falling asleep dying in his sleep is not going to pop up on the Google. That's not newsworthy. So you'll never know if that happened. But I want to give you one additional note to be aware of in case it pops up. One of the topics that always gets discussed is AIDS and HIV. If somebody has had or died from AIDS or HIV, you can't disclose that in any way, shape, or form. And the reason being, those fall under the handicapping or disability sections of the fair housing laws that we'll talk about later. So while you can disclose to somebody that they can go look at, or tell somebody to go look at the sex offender database, you would never, ever, ever be able to say anything in regard to whether somebody has had or died from AIDS or HIV, because it would violate fair housing laws. What you got, Patrick?
Just going back to the prior examples of things that are not considered material facts that need to be disclosed, would those...
Be careful with that word need. You don't need to disclose it. Be careful with that word need, because there's no obligation to disclose things that are not material facts.
Right, okay.
All right, continue.
I guess depending on whether you are the seller's broker or the buyer's broker, would that affect your judgment as to whether you would disclose or be likely to disclose those things?
Sure, we'll run with that. Yeah. If you were the listing agent, may you not want to disclose to somebody that 22 people were murdered in cold blood in that house? Maybe, right? Because that's going to make it hard as hell to sell, and you're not in trouble for not disclosing it. Arguably, though, Patrick, there's a lot of weirdos in this world. You could probably sell it for more if you disclose that to somebody. Somebody's going to buy it as a haunted house, right? Let's just be real. You can pick and choose at that point. If it's not a material fact, we don't really care, because you can't be in trouble for disclosing it or not. The important thing is to understand that regardless of whether you disclose it or not, you can't lie. So Patrick, if you were a listing agent and you know 22 people were murdered in that home, and somebody, buyer, seller, buyer's agent, asked you, anybody ever died in this home? And you know this, you can't be like, nope, didn't happen. That'd be fraud. Okay, that'd be a misrepresentation. But you could say, well, I'd rather not discuss, or I'm not at liberty to say, or I'd rather not answer. You're welcome to do your own research. Any other way to avoid the question? Absolutely. Yeah. So in North Carolina, haunted, somebody died in, somebody was arrested in, somebody was stabbed in, you know, all these stigmatized, they're not material facts. Sex offender, not material fact. It's just the AIDS, HIV one, right? Can't disclose that even if you wanted to, because it'd be a violation of fair housing. Now, let me add 3 more things just in case they could pop up on your test. We have 3 special categories of material facts in North Carolina. One of them is a meth house. So while somebody arrested for doing crack in a house is not a material fact, if somebody was going Breaking Bad and making some crystal meth in a house, that is a material fact for life in North Carolina. Meth houses. The next one that is a special category for life in North Carolina is polybutylene pipes, if they have ever leaked. Not polybutylene pipes in general. Polybutylene pipes specifically if they have ever leaked, even if they've been replaced with something else now. Material fact for life. I think that's how it's spelled. Because I always get people who ask me, polybutylene. Polybutylene pipes if they've ever leaked. Last one is what we call EIFS. EIFS. Which stands for Exterior Insulating and Finishing System. The less formal name is synthetic stucco. Not to be confused with real stucco, which is popular in coastal areas in Florida and Georgia. Synthetic stucco was a product that looked like stucco, but was not the same. And it was notorious for allowing water intrusion behind it and causing damage. So even if synthetic stucco has been removed and you put a different type of siding up, it's a material fact for life that it was once clad with synthetic stucco, also called EIFS or EIFS. What you got, Eric?
Yeah, so back to the sex offender thing, because I guess it's more of a moral question. So if you were a listing agent and your seller was a sex offender and you had an unrepresented buyer, how would you go about informing the buyer without breaking confidentiality?
You already answered the question. Do whatever you feel is right. Unfortunately, I'm not really sure if I can give you a direct answer, because since it's not a material fact, and if you disclosed it, here's the other thing too, Eric. If you think about it, let me give you 2 just points of consideration. If your seller is a sex offender, does it really matter, right? Because they'll be gone when the buyer moves in. Hopefully, sex offender means, you know, low key, not like there's dead bodies in the wall, though. You know what I'm saying? So is it even really an issue at that point? Probably not. I just can't. I can't give you any advice on that, because technically this is not a material fact. You don't have any obligation to disclose it to the public. But if you feel obligated, maybe pray about it. I don't know what to tell you, Eric, you know? I got nothing. All right. Yeah. What you got, Lisa?
So I have a few questions. So the polyurethane, whatever that is, what is it in? What kind of pipe is it in?
That is the type of pipe.
Oh, I mean, what does it supply?
Water.
Oh, it's a water pipe. Okay.
It's a water pipe.
And then the other thing is, asbestos siding is not in the same category.
Asbestos siding is not a material fact for life in North Carolina. It's not one that has ever been specifically named. Asbestos knowledge in and of itself would be a material fact from an environmental point of view. But that's not a special category, right? Asbestos would just be a material fact. Is that something that somebody would want to know? Yeah. So it's not a special category. It's a normal category of material fact.
Okay, so these have special categories.
Yep,
okay.
Special categories in North Carolina. Yep.
And then the last thing is, so if you have a buyer with you and you're not the selling agent, the selling agent did not include some of the material facts.
Hold on. Do you mean the listing agent?
Yes, the listing
agent.
the listing agent didn't give certain material facts, how on the hook is the buyer's agent? I mean, of course, if the buyer is, if they are interested and they want to make an offer, but how far deep does the buyer's agent? I mean, where does it stop?
Honestly, I don't have an answer for you. It's up to the interpretation of the real estate commission. If somebody reports you because they did not have information that they thought they should have gotten, and they blame you, and it goes to the commission will establish, were you at fault? Was the other person at fault? Were you both at fault? I don't have a black and white answer for that, unfortunately, because it's the obligations of both, right? Listing agent, buyer's agent, both have obligations. If somebody sees something, they need to disclose it. Yeah. Brittany, correct. So Brittany says these are NC for life, even if replaced, correct? Because it was once there. Yep. Meth house, polybutylene pipes, and EIFS are all material facts for life, right? Most material facts can be resolved, right? My roof leaks. That's a material fact. Well, I fixed it. You're probably fine. Not a material fact anymore. My roof is 82 years old. I put a new one. Probably fine, right? There's some exceptions for like recurring issues. But what I'm telling you is, if you have removed all the synthetic stucco, replaced any damaged wood, and put new siding back on, you still have to disclose that it was once clad with synthetic stucco. Hire somebody. Beth says, how do you find out about the pipes leaking? Hire somebody to check them. Folks, don't focus on the nitty-gritty of how, when, where, what, why, right? Just understand that for a test point of view, it is a material fact for life. This is more real-world application stuff that I don't want to get you as caught up on. But you would have to either have somebody that knew or have an inspection or, something like that to discover. It's not something that's generally just known. So this chapter is kind of a short, sweet, simple chapter. And I've alluded to a couple of these things, so I'm not going to spend a crazy amount of time here, especially because it's not exceptionally testable, right? This is environmental. So it normally kind of has its own section, but we put it in with the agency. But let me just show you and remind you. Environmental issues in real estate. 3 questions on the national side, okay? It's not something that I want to spend 10 years on is the point. I'm trying. We want to get to some bigger and better things. So that is where we're at now. Environmental. So when we're dealing with environmental, there's just a couple things listed here. CERCLA, Superfund, lead-based paint hazards, radon gas hazards, which I've mentioned, carbon monoxide, septic tanks. There's more than this, though. Like Lisa just said, asbestos is another big environmental. Electromagnetic fields come into the environmental discussion. So when we're dealing with real property, there are some environmental issues and disclosures that we need to be aware of. The presence of known environmental hazards is a material fact, which goes back to what Lisa said. Asbestos, yes, right? Material fact. Underground storage tank, material fact. Contamination from petroleum-based products, material fact. And there's a few others. So when we're dealing with environmental stuff, of course it's a material fact. Wouldn't you want to know if there was radioactive material on your soil? Wouldn't you want to know if there's a buried landfill? Wouldn't you want to know if there's, a lot of things? Well, let me tell you one of the weirdest ones, okay? One of the weirdest ones is underground storage tanks. Back in the so Mafina says CERCLA and Superfund, what do they do? Back in the day, that's actually what I'm answering right now. It was very common for homes to be heated by some type of oil or gas-based, petroleum-based furnace. And what they would do regularly is they would bury these underground storage tanks to hold this petroleum product. Well, folks, technology has changed a lot over the years, and as heat pumps and other systems were invented, a lot of people stopped utilizing these oil-based furnaces. And so as they updated their properties and they added in HVAC and central air, they abandoned these tanks, Folks, if you put a big old metal tank in the ground where there's microorganisms and water, what happens to them?
They erode.
Yeah, they corrode, they deteriorate, they rust, they leak. And so if you never emptied out all of this oil, it's now in your soil. So there was a lot of folks, you have to understand this. The way that they did things in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 60s, up to today, very, very different. Did you know that there used to be people who sold radioactive water as a curative tonic? Look it up, right? You ever watch that documentary about the girls who made those radioactive watches who all got cancer and died, right? There was a lot of people who did a lot of things that they thought made sense at the time that didn't. And this is one of those examples. These all got abandoned, and it caused a lot of issues because as we got more and more aware of the issues, we had to kind of figure out how do we fix this. So when we're dealing with CERCLA and the Superfund, it basically has to do with environmental cleanup. Okay? Where's the... I'm trying to see the acronym. Hold on. It's somewhere on here. I don't want to... Somebody Google CERCLA. I always get it wrong, so I don't want to say it out loud. Comprehensive Environmental Reduction and Cleanup Liability Act, I think. Anybody Google it? Seriously, I know every single one of you has your phone in your hand. Somebody Google it and tell me what the exact verbiage is for CERCLA. Lord, have mercy. Turn off your Candy Crush game. Google it for me. Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act. So instead of, I said reduction, but it was response. I was close. Yeah, there's CERCLA. Thank you so much, Gene. Yeah. So this was something that was enacted to help with some of these environmental contaminations that had happened over the years. And it was associated with a Superfund to provide grants for cleaning up environmental hazards. Well, folks, this says they can apply for help from the federal Superfund. There's no guarantee. Last I heard, the Superfund's gone except for commercial, right? There is nobody out there giving money away to homeowners to help with individual grants for personal cleanup. But that's what you have to know. So this was a big thing for the underground storage tanks. For a while, you could apply for funding, for grants from CERCLA and the Superfund to get money to help you clean up the soils that were contaminated, remove an underground storage tank that was abandoned. But what they ultimately decided is it was so expensive and they ran out of money. There were so many of them that after a certain point for residential properties, they said, nah, screw it. And 1980 is it's not a very testable number. I don't think they're going to test you on it. But know that what basically happened is after 1980, they said, well, if you own the home as of now, it's your problem. Because they couldn't really pinpoint whose fault it was because they'd been in there for so long. So the long end of it is people who own properties with hazardous contaminations or underground storage tanks are probably on hook for the bill to have it cleaned up. It's their problem now. Okay? That's the biggest piece of it. There's no money left. Underground storage tanks are a pain in the butt. They will still assist with older gas stations, right, where they've got 10,000 gallon tanks. I think they're still assisting with things like that, much bigger environmental issues, right? And Becky, if you wanted to read more about it, there you go. EPA.gov, Superfund, CERCLA, overview. Like I said, 3 questions total. There's only so many things that you can focus on for the environmental piece, right? I will tell you the most testable environmental piece has nothing to do with CERCLA and has everything to do with lead. So I'm going to teach you something very important right now. Highly testable. Make sure you memorize. This is one of the first things I'm going to tell you definitively memorize. I need you to memorize a word and a year. A word and a year. Both. The word is prior to, right? Prior to 1978. So it was common, I told you, in a different time, many, many years ago, to use products that we've now decided are not necessarily safe. Lead is one of them. Lead was used as a drying and pigment agent in paint for quite some time. But then we realized that it was hazardous and it was not a very positive thing. If you ingested it or got it in your bloodstream, it could cause all kinds of issues. And so it has been outlawed in residential use since 1978, which means that in order to notify the public of its existence, we created what we call the Lead-Based Paint Hazard Reduction Act of 1992. You don't need to remember the year 1992. You do need to remember the year 1978. So what it states is, anytime that we are selling a property built prior to 1978, folks, if I say prior to 78, what year am I talking about? 77 and before. Be very careful on tests because we will throw numbers at you like a home built in 1979 and we're just waiting for you to screw up and pick something to do with lead-based paint, and it's nothing to do with lead-based paint on that question. It is prior to 78. So a home built in 77 and before is required to give a disclosure, another disclosure. Here we go again, right? So when we are dealing with homes built prior to 78, we have to provide a lead-based paint hazard addendum. That's what we utilize. And I'll tell you something interesting about this. It's a lot like the MOG in the sense that there is no option for no representation. It's either I do know of lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards in my home, or I don't know. And then the other question that it asks the seller is, do you have any reports to go with what you do know? They do not have the option of no rep on this. They have to sing like a bird. If they know, they have to tell us. If they don't know, they just tell us they don't know. So any home built prior to 1978 has to have this lead-based paint disclosure associated with it, where the seller discloses if they do or don't know about lead or lead-based paint hazards. The other thing that this Reduction Act states is that the buyer has the right to a 10-day evaluation to test and see if there's any lead-based paint hazards. Now in North Carolina, because we have due diligence, they typically go hand in hand with each other. And the buyers have the right to waive that inspection. I will tell you one thing to be aware of for the real world. Lead is not especially dangerous. Lead-based paint is not especially dangerous for most people. Why? Because it's dangerous if it gets ingested or into your bloodstream. Most of us, not all, looking at some of you, don't go around licking baseboards and chewing on paint. You know what I'm saying? You know who does? Pets and kids. So it's more dangerous for people who have young children and pregnant women, because if it gets in their bloodstream, it can cause severe birth defects. Okay? It's not really considered a hazard to most grown adults with no health issues. But I will tell you one other thing. Just like we had obligations under the Residential Property Disclosure Act, we have obligations with this as well. We'll look at it at some point, probably not today. This depends on if it pops up in the slides. I'm not going to pull it up separately. There's a place for both the listing agent and the selling agent, right, the one working with the buyer, to sign the lead-based paint hazard addendum. Because the listing agent has to inform the seller of their obligations to disclose truthfully. The buyer's agent has to disclose to the buyer, or more specifically, give the buyer a copy of the pamphlet, Lead in Your Home, put out by the Environmental Protection Agency. So both listing and selling agent or buyer's agent needs to sign it acknowledging that they did their job. Highly testable. This is the most testable environmental piece. It says lead-based paint jazz. So this, I'm going to go off on a tangent here because I don't want you to get confused with this word. there are a couple environmental things, and we use different terminologies when we're talking about how do we remediate them, make them better, whatever. So when we're talking about lead-based paint, I told you, it's not especially risky unless you're going to eat paint chips. So if the paint is in good condition and not flaking off, it's not really that much of a concern. And so this word encapsulation may pop up for lead, because if you put another coat of paint and it's all in good repair, it's not really that risky. Everybody understand that? The reason why I wanted to go off on a tangent here is because there is another time, a more common time, test-wise, that I think you'll see this word encapsulation. And that's with asbestos. Because I told you it was a concern. Asbestos is a mineral that was used for its flame resistance and insulating properties. So it's very common insulator and used as tiles in commercial and some residential buildings. Well, asbestos is more dangerous than lead-based paint. Why? Because the way that the asbestos works is it becomes friable. Friable, Friable, means the particulates can disintegrate and then become airborne. And then you can inhale them. And they can cause lung cancer and other issues. Well, when we're dealing with asbestos, encapsulation is a very important and testable word. Because from an environmental point of view, encapsulation is the preferred method of remediating asbestos, meaning making it less dangerous or not dangerous. Because if you put some kind of epoxy or sealant or something on the outside of asbestos, it never becomes friable. The particulates never get in the air. Does that make sense? So let me expand one more time on this. You can remove asbestos. So don't look at this. Look at me. I'm not talking about lead. I'm talking about asbestos. You can remove asbestos, but you have to hire a qualified, certified company to do it. And it is extremely costly. You know why? Because you have to fully saturate all the asbestos material. Folks, if you start ripping away at stuff that becomes airborne, what do you think is going to happen?
You inhale it.
Well, yeah, it becomes even more airborne.
Spores are going to come out. You're going to inhale it.
Yeah, it's even more airborne. It's all over the place. It's dangerous. So the only way to remove it safely is to get it soaking wet. Because if you think about dirt all over your shirt, if you slap it, right, dust is going to fly into the air. If your shirt's soaking wet, it's just you're going to sound like an otter, slap, 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 or like a seal. You know how they slap their belly? Nothing's going to come off. So you can remove it, but here's the thing you have to understand from a testing point of view. The preferred method of abatement or remediation for asbestos is encapsulation. It is faster, it is easier, it is cheaper, it is more efficient, it is safer than trying to remove it. That's why that word is so important, and I think you're more likely to see encapsulation with asbestos than with lead-based paint. Could you see it with either? Sure. But I needed to go off on that tangent because it's more commonly associated with asbestos, not lead-based paint. Everybody with me? Erica says, are buyers or sellers responsible for treatments of asbestos or lead? I'm sorry, Erica. No. I mean, the answer to either was no. Would it have to be a material fact that was potentially disclosed? Yeah. Here's what you have to understand about material facts. My foundation is in terrible repair. It needs $80,000 worth of work. That's a material fact. No one ever said I had to fix it. All right? My home has lead in it or asbestos in it. That's a material fact. No one ever said I had to fix it. If a buyer is aware of it and wants to buy the property anyway, do it to it, Pruitt. The rule is we have to disclose, never fix. Excellent question. I'm not even, we don't need the questions here. I want you to use your brains here. A home was built in 1969 and it's being leased in Durham. Now, let me remind you before we take this question further that the Lead-Based Paint Hazard Reduction Act does apply to both where people are living and buying, right? So leasing does count. What would need to be provided to the prospective tenant?
Lead-based paint.
Lead-based paint.
Lead-based paint disclosure. That's exactly right. Lisa says seller doesn't have to say it's in their home. If they know, they do. So that was the difference, right? The lead-based paint, let me see if it's in there just so I can give you this point because I don't want you to have any loose ends here. If we look at section 3. It's not there. It's okay. I'll help you out. Y'all can just mull over your thoughts for a second. Let me show you this.
I mean, like the tile and stuff, you don't know if it's actually asbestos. The siding, you kind of know, but if somebody has the tile, they don't know unless it's tested, so they can say they don't know.
Oh, correct. I'm sorry. So let me just provide some clarity then, Lisa. I thought you were talking about lead. For lead, on that disclosure, the seller does not have the right of no representation, just like on the MOG. For asbestos, yeah, I mean, if the seller doesn't know, remember the seller had no obligation to disclose. There's no special law for asbestos. It just falls under standard material fact disclosure. So if a seller is not sure if it's asbestos, they're not disclosing. And even if they are sure, technically they don't have to disclose. But we would, right?
But lead, yes. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do this real fast. There you go. So this is just a slew of different forms that we utilize on a regular basis. And so this is outside of Learn, Test, Pass. So sometimes it's easier for me to just come in here. Lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazard addendum. And so let me go full screen. If you look right here, seller disclosure. Presence of lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards is either known or the seller has no knowledge. Nowhere on here is there an option for no representation. And then right here, the seller is saying seller has provided reports or the seller has no reports. There is no option for no rep. You either know or you don't know. Those are the only options. And so then remember I told you about the agent, right? Well, buyer acknowledges receipt of seller statement. Buyer has received the pamphlet for Protect Your Family of Lead in Your Home. And when you come down here, agent's acknowledgement. Agent has informed the seller of their seller's obligations and is aware of his or her responsibility. I told you. Listing agent, selling agent. Also, this should make you feel better too, because this is a standardized document. And how are they naming the parties? Listing agent, selling agent. I'm telling you, you will never see this in any other context. But that word does not mean buyer's agent automatically, right? Because you could just be working with a buyer. Told you I'm not going to steer you wrong. So just a couple other, let's see. Would it be ideal to advise your client to remedy a lead-based paint issue before listing if it is known in hopes of a smoother closing or more offers coming in? No. Because it is very hard to remediate a lead-based paint issue. Yet again, could you have all your drywall removed, have the house tested, and then say it's a lead-free home? Sure, but that's not cost effective. Most people are not going to care. And you think there's a chance your 1930s home has lead in it?
Sure do.
Yeah. And you feeling okay today?
Yeah, and I've done quite a bit of painting myself in the house.
Yeah. Lead is not scary to anybody except people who have itty bitty little people who are going to lick baseboards and, eat crap off the floor, okay? And even when you look at the pamphlet, it's, just take it with a grain of salt. It's not, there is no realm that I ever think it would be worth financially trying to tackle that project before listing a home. Most people don't care. Don't make that judgment yourself. Let your client decide, but most people don't care. Radon, folks, you've heard me talk about it, okay? So here's where I get into radon a little bit more. Radon, colorless, odorless, tasteless. I told you that a high radon exposure in a home would be what we call a latent material fact. No way that you could possibly figure it out just walking into a home. And I'll tell you this. The presence of radon in and of itself is not a material fact. There is a concentration that you have to worry about. And it is the third box here. Levels of what we call 4 picocuries per liter or higher are considered hazardous per the EPA. If you're at 4 picocuries per liter or higher, it's a material fact. Anything less than that is not. The only way to figure out if you have a radon issue is what?
Have it tested.
Have it tested. That's it. Yeah, have it tested. So this last piece, right? I've been telling you about these different ways to remediate an environmental issue. When it comes to, and this is one of the things that could be testable. Yes, I would remember 4 picocuries, Marquita. That is testable. The other thing is, if we wanted to treat it, it's a gas, folks. How do you treat a gas? Ventilation, right? Let me give you the most obvious analogy here, right, to think about. If you're cruising down the highway with your significant other and y'all stop for Taco Bell and they're driving and they rip the biggest one they've ever done in their life and they lock the windows, your life is miserable for a while, isn't it? And what are you begging them to do?
Open the window.
Open the window. Get some airflow. Ventilate the car. That's how you fix gas problems, folks. It is a gas. How do you fix it? Ventilation. When it comes in, it is from naturally occurring radioactive material that's decaying in the ground. There's nothing you can do to get rid of it because your soil can't be taken away underneath your house. The only way to fix it is you put either what's called a passive or active system in your crawl space, your basement, or wherever, which basically it vents it out so it goes up above the house. So if you ever see like a house that has either extra vents, that'd be a passive system, or if they've got like a tube that runs up above the house along the side, and there's a bulge right here, that's a fan. And so that fan is just sucking air from under the crawl space up and kicking it above. Ventilation, that's how you fix it. I don't need to ask you this question. You're fine. I think radon is pretty self-explanatory. So here is the slide for asbestos, just for you visual folks.
Yeah, I did have kind of a question.
Go ahead.
On one of the slides, 3.3 slides is number 5. It says, which of the following statements is accurate regarding radon gas and residential properties? I think it's the first one, but is it in nearly all properties at all times?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because it said it was like just in North Carolina. I wasn't sure if it was like certain states or.
Yeah, if you look, hold on, let me show you this really fast because that's an excellent question. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I
mean, it's the obvious answer that is correct, but because the other ones are completely wrong, but. I just want to make sure I understand that, so if they give me other options that might be close to correct.
This is a map of where radon is present in North Carolina. The deeper the purple, the more likely it is to have higher concentrations. It is only in these few spaces, very minute areas in North Carolina, that it is less likely to be present. Now, the fact that it exists, CJ, doesn't automatically mean it's of danger, right? Because you know, you could have 2 houses side by side in this deep purple area. One have an issue and another one doesn't. There's no rhyme or reason to it. But it could be present in all houses at all times, just not in a consequential level. Absolutely. Excellent question. So asbestos, I told you, the problem comes when it becomes friable, right? Breaks down the particulates, become airborne, you inhale them, okay? Not a good thing at all. I told you it was a mineral that was very popular because it was heat and flame resistant. You can imagine people love that. Cut down on AC bills, electricity bills, right? And then on top of that, if a building was to burn down that was full of asbestos, it would burn a lot slower, meaning the fire department may be able to save it. But it had other ramifications, right? It's not a good thing. It can cause all kinds of health problems, like lung cancer. So, outlawed in residential construction. Not commercial. Are there some places that may still utilize asbestos in commercial materials? Yeah, it's possible. Do you think there might be some schools out there that are full of asbestos? Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah, right. How could that ever be a thing? No, that's not real. Yeah. They're outlawed in residential because people spend a lot of time in residential. The idea is commercial places, you only spend 8 hours a day for your entire life. But whatever, who's counting? Yet again, not as common after 1978. Generally found in homes built prior to 78. Brokers must disclose asbestos that is known or reasonably could be known. This is one of those things where you're not automatically supposed to be able to identify every material that definitively is asbestos. So there's no way. But if there's a very popular asbestos tile that, telltale sign, it's a material fact, just disclose it. So here's the other thing that I mentioned earlier. Yet again, it's just the way I teach. At certain times, there's key points that I like to impress upon you. But then the slides will come back up. I just wanted you to not get confused because you see encapsulation again. You could see it for either, but it is more prominent with asbestos. More likely that you'll see it on a test with asbestos. I told you for removal, it has to be completely saturated. It is possible to remove it, but it's very costly. It's not the preferred method of dealing with asbestos. The preferred method is encapsulation. Yeah, me too, y'all. I've been in front of this. My back is like logging up. So I see a lot of y'all stretching. I'm like, yeah, me too. Oh, God, a long day. Back is logging up. I'm too old for this. I got to teach all. Oh my God, I got to teach all day tomorrow too. I got morning and night class tomorrow. I'm gonna have to stretch tonight. That's no joke. Last couple of things to talk about in the environmental. Carbon monoxide. Folks, carbon monoxide is arguably one of the most dangerous environmental concerns. Why? Because it can kill you very rapidly, and it is existent in almost every home. Let me explain. Carbon monoxide, yet again, colorless, odorless, comes from combustion. Your car has an internal combustion engine. Folks, when you crank your car up, that is exactly what's coming out of your tailpipe, is carbon monoxide. And in fact, it is a very common way for people to commit suicide, is to just crank their car up in the garage and they're just gone. Because it is painless. You just basically go to sleep and then you're gone. Okay? When we're dealing with carbon monoxide, there's a couple things that I just want to point out. When we get into some of the later topics like property management, and it's going to show up on the next slide, we have what we call the Residential Rental Agreements Act, which talks about what a landlord has to provide to a tenant and what a tenant has to do for a landlord. And one of the things that a landlord has to do is provide a habitable living environment, including, but not limited to, providing smoke detectors and one carbon monoxide detector per floor with a combustible heat source or garage, because it is exceptionally dangerous. Okay? It is something that you will not know is killing you until it's too late, unfortunately. So if you've got your car in your garage, make sure you open your garage door before you crank your car up. If you've got gas stoves or a gas pack heat pump, right? All the above. Make sure that you have carbon monoxide detectors. That's dangerous, Brittany. Parents put the wrong water heater in our rental property and it was leaking carbon monoxide in my bedroom. Yeah, that's dangerous. What did you just do to deserve that? That's right. Hopefully nothing that severe, right? Yeah. So this is a big one. Just to extend a little bit further on the landlord. The landlord is responsible for providing the initial batteries when you move in, but replacing them is a tenant responsibility. Now, if the units fail, right, they have to be replaced by the landlord if they stop working, not because of batteries, so then they just fail. But keeping fresh batteries is a tenant responsibility. Now, do understand that if you've ever lived in an apartment, a lot of apartment complexes take it upon themselves to come in regularly to replace them, and that's twofold. Number one is for liability reasons, right, to make sure that everything's working, and if you're too lazy to fix it. And number two, let's be honest, they're just snooping to see if you have a cat that you're not supposed to have, right?
You want that pet fee.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're just snooping to see if you have that cat, right? We're going to replace these batteries for you. You got a dog in here? Right?
Right.
Yeah. It's on.
Would it be this cat?
That cat, yeah. All y'all got cats. Like, there's so many cats just popping up on screen everywhere. Anne's cat is just always like right up on the. It wasn't it yours, Anne? Just like right here, just like cat face. It looks like Jurassic Park cat.
She was walking across the keyboard, and I was hoping she wasn't gonna like accidentally
Disconnect it.
the whole group.
That's right. Cats are bad about that. They love getting right up in the electronics and the business, as they say, right? Cats all up in the business. Some of y'all's dogs too. It's okay. We like pets though. I've already told you about this, so this is revisiting it. Meth labs, material fact, okay? Obviously, meth would be a dangerous thing, but in North Carolina, it is considered a material fact for life.
I mean, does that just mean you're like stuck with that house? Because I can't imagine anyone ever wanting to buy a meth house.
You know, it's funny. I remember seeing one, I think it was like in Garner not that long ago, and there was like a listing agent who had it, put it on there, and that was exactly what it was. Like, this house was a meth house. And I don't remember if it ever sold or not. I mean, I suppose you can get a hell of a deal. I arguably, CJ, in theory, if you were to demolish the entire thing, you could use the land, and then it's no longer a meth house, right? The reason why it's a material fact is because all of the toxic fumes and gases and things can leach into it, and it can be hazardous. But if you demolish the house, take it all away, and build a brand new one, technically you've circumvented that, right?
So would that remove the requirement to say it's a material fact?
I'm not going to say definitively yes, but I would lean that way. Yeah. There you go, Natalia. I'd be worried if past clients coming over. You got any more of that meth?
Luckily,
Material. I'm sorry.
that's okay. I'll say luckily most of them blow up anyway.
Yeah, well, you know. What were you going to say, Patrick?
I was going to ask, how are material facts for life recorded?
They're not. Like I said, don't get so. It's a great question, but there's never going to be any circumstance that I could tell you exactly how that works on the test and in real life. Because do you think that 20 years later somebody is still telling you that it was a meth house 20 years ago? No. Somewhere along the line it got dropped. Somebody stopped Googling it, stopped showing in the news reports. But just understand that it's still by rule considered a material fact for life. If you could discover it, if you did know it, if you all that, yeah. Underground storage tanks. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Question. So, if there's any other drugs other than meth that happened inside of the home, is that a material fact if the buyer has? I
would no. right? If Scarface was packaging blow in the house, that's not necessarily a material fact. Because I told you, site of criminal activity or drugs is what we call stigmatized, not a material fact. Yeah. The only one that has a special category in North Carolina is meth. Otherwise, it says site of criminal activity, not a material fact.
Now, is that just the manufacture of meth or the selling of meth?
Well, the rule says meth house, so I suppose it depends on how you interpret it. My interpretation is cooking because it could be leached in, right? Like once it's packaged, I in the little baggies, I doubt it's. I don't know, Jeff, right? Some of these questions are specific. You trying to start up a side business, Jeff?
No comment. Adult diapers.
Adult diapers depends. You want to buy some? That's what it depends on. Folks, Jeff, don't tempt these people. Okay, they're in a hard time right now, learning all this stuff. Okay, got to keep them on the straight and narrow for the next 6 weeks.
I've been up for 2 weeks.
I'm gonna come back next week. Jeff gave me the hookup. I've been reading stuff for 16 days. Haven't slept in 3 weeks, Jeff. What the hell's in that stuff, right? Yeah. Anyway. Underground storage tanks. I know, but we got to keep you awake somehow. This is underground storage tanks that I was just talking about. Oil, petroleum. You know, they broke. They leaked, contamination. That goes back to CERCLA and the Superfund. Okay. Basically, the big thing to remember for this is that there was a Superfund, but now they basically say if you own the property after 1980 that has an underground storage tank, it's your problem. You have to pay for it. That's the biggest takeaway for that. Yeah, Lisa, I had a listing like that. Lisa says, has anyone been in a house where someone smoked for 5 years? It's gross. Like, especially when you take the picture down and it's like white and everything else is like tar colored. I don't like this picture. I'm not really sure why this is in the slides. I keep forgetting to ask Travis why this was necessary. What we did to him to deserve this. Sure, yeah, nice pedicure, right?
I was gonna say she just got a pedicure, and that's what she does.
I got nothing, folks. I got nothing. This one's a little slightly less offensive, okay? Speaking of cats. Yeah. I wish my cat did that, right? That'd be convenient. I need to teach him how to do that. Wouldn't that be nice? He looks so serene and focused too. Folks, let's talk about septic tanks for a second. Had to paint a house that someone smoked in for many years. Every room had to be kills 3 times and then 3 coats of paint. Yeah, that's exactly what happened with that listing I had, CJ. We had to do kills on the entire thing, including the subfloor, before we put in new carpets. And then we ran an ozone machine in there for about 3 days to get in all the duct work. And somebody did buy it for good money. So, I mean, we worked it out. Thank God it was like a 1,600 square foot ranch. Because, there's no year that you need to memorize for the underground storage. It was 1980 was the year, but that's not going to be testable. That's just me giving you extra information. I've never heard anybody say that they were asked that in any way, shape, or form. So let's end up the day talking about septic tanks, which means that you're going to avoid the really difficult 3.4 discussions until next week. The downside about that is I wish we could have started them so you could have started doing some, but still read forward to 3.4 like we've been discussing because it is a very, very important section. But to end the day, let's talk about septics and why they're important to you. If you're not familiar with a septic tank, it is an on-site, meaning at your house, waste disposal system. So if you're on city sewer, you got a pump that shoots your household waste to a water treatment facility. If you're on a septic tank, everything that goes down your drains, your toilets, your everything, leaves your house through an outlet pipe and goes into a septic tank. And a septic tank is just a big cement tank. And what happens is everything gets dumped in here. The solids sink to the bottom. A lighter form of solids float to the top. We call that scum and sludge. And then there's wastewater that kind of sits in the middle. Typically, there's at least two actual sections. So there's sometimes like some kind of divider wall right here. And there's what we call the inlet baffle and outlet baffle. So only the water is getting out. The liquidy stuff that's separated out. And so then it goes out this to what we call a distribution box, where there's multiple pipes that go out into your yard. We call that your drain lines or your leach field. So what's happening is your wastewater, and you look like you're disgusted by this conversation. Is it about this that you're actually that disgusted? Is that?
I'm nasty. I'm sorry.
I wish you all could have seen Anne. She's just.
Yes.
You look like somebody just kicked her dog. Like she just was not okay with any of this thing that she just looks so upset. Yeah, very expressive. So here's what happens. The liquids, the watery waste stuff goes into your yard. And you have to understand that all this kinds of gross stuff happens all the time. You ever heard the saying, does a bear shit in the woods? Right? Yeah, of course they do. Dogs do, bears do, birds do, cats do, right? When these liquids go into your soil, they're naturally filtered before they go into underground water basins. So they get filtered by nature. And what happens is the sludge sits there and anaerobic bacteria eats away at it, kind of keeps it at bay. Every couple of years, you have to come in here and you have to pump these. And that's it. As long as you take care of them, there's nothing wrong with them. They work just fine. The reason why septic tanks are such an important discussion for real estate agents, aside from the environmental, making sure that you have the ability to have an on-site waste system, right? Think about that material facts thing that I was telling you about. You can't assume that a site will perk for a septic system. That's what we call it, perking, percolating, right? In other words, it'll actually filter out. Here's the other big thing. When we're dealing with listing homes for sale and marketing properties, you have a permit for your septic that is given to you by the county environmental or health department, okay? County environmental or health department. That permit is for a set number of bedrooms. Occupancy is based on bedrooms, not bathrooms. And so if you've got a 3-bedroom septic, well, typically we rate that for double occupancy per bedroom. In other words, 6 adults could probably live there and you'd be just fine. Okay? Doesn't matter how many toilets you have, matters how many bedrooms you have and adults living there. But the thing that's the big takeaway for real estate brokers, let me give you my house as an example. My house is on a septic system and it is 3,150 square feet. Lots of space. And I have 6 rooms, all of which have closets, except for one, and windows and doors, okay? Only one doesn't have a closet, the one that I'm currently in. But my septic is a 3-bedroom septic system. So if I go to sell my house, I have a 3-bedroom, 3-bonus room house. I can get creative. I can call it a 3-bedroom, a bonus, a media room, and an office. But I can never market it for more than the number of bedrooms allotted by my septic permit, unless I upgraded my system and got a new permit issued by the county health or environmental department. If I upgraded my system to be a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom, then I could change how I market it. Everybody understand that? Otherwise, septic is what it is. Brandy, were you grading me on that? Is that what's happening here?
I was listening. I was making sure you were saying it right. It's all good.
Oh, I forgot you do that. That's right.
Yes, I am a licensed septic inspector.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I saw CJ was on my screen. She was I'm sorry, they were giving me the nod. How do you prefer to be addressed, CJ? I'm so sorry.
They, them.
They, them. Okay, so sorry. CJ was giving me the nod, right? But then I forgot, Brandy, you do that. So I get a check mark, right? Everything's cool?
Good. You're good.
Cool.
Everything was good.
Yeah, see? Folks, I'm telling y'all can trust me. Okay, see? Brandy's backing up. I'm giving you accurate information. I'm not going to steer y'all wrong. All right? What you got, Ann?
Brandy, can you shed any light on why there's a photo of a woman with a beautiful pedicure stepping in a pile of that?
I don't know, because you know what? I do have a nail license too, and I would never go barefoot. Yeah, when I go and with my husband and do all this stuff, we have boots, we have gloves. Like, we are regular people.
Right, yeah.
Look, if y'all could see Ann's face when we were talking about this, imagine what Ann's face would look like, Brandy, when we crack that baby open and start pumping it.
Pretty interesting. It really is. But I have never, honestly, we don't really go out there, without being,
Yeah. Yeah.
We want no part of nastiness.
No, absolutely.
Family anyways, we're good.
I think we can all establish too that was cow, right? That she stepped in, because if that was human, they're in the hospital right now. Let's just call it what it is. Okay, that was a cow patty, is what that was. I still don't know why anybody would deliberately put their foot in it, but yeah. And Becky says elephant. More likely that. Yeah, maybe that was a safari. I don't know. The Taco Bell gene. There you go.
Has the leach field always been has it always been a thing, or is that something new in building?
Well, it's always been a thing, but understand there's other types of septic systems, right? There's what we call cesspools. There's mound systems. There's a lot of different ways that you can eliminate these. But in North Carolina, leach fields are exceptionally common, especially in areas that have bigger lots, right? In Johnston County, their sewer treatment plant cannot handle the amount of residents in Johnston County. It's not even possible. And you have to get special permits to tie into it. Becky Flowers is about the only person who can swing that for Flowers Plantation, if you're familiar with Clayton. So it's always been done that way. The way that it's changed, or the way that it's regulated, has changed over time, Lisa. For example, septics were a thing back in the 60s and 70s, but they did not have to have repair fields necessarily back then. They did not have to have designated repair areas back then. And sometimes the amount of lines were less, right? So whereas they might have used a 2-line system with no repair field back in the day, that same house might need a 4-line system, and have a very large repair field. So it's changed. But drain lines, leach fields, been around for a while.
And the vent, my family built their houses a long time ago, so I was really confused with the vents and then the leach fields and all kinds of things.
Which vents?
But is that not vents on top of that septic tank?
No, those are that would be what's called a riser if it comes all the way to the surface. So you can basically get access to it by just taking off like a cement or sometimes a plastic cover. Other times they're buried, and so the lid would actually be flush, and then you would have to dig to get to that lid, which is what I'm sure Brandy and her company have to do quite a bit. If you don't have risers, dig down and pull this lid off. So it's not a vent, it's just a cover.
We just need to know the septic tank is big enough for the house. That's all we need to know.
As a consumer, yes.
Oh no, as a real estate person.
Well, arguably, you just have to market it right, and you have to know how it works and tell your client that. The other thing goes back to red flags. Lisa, if your client tells you that they are on city sewer, but you see red flags that say that they have a septic tank in their backyard, you need to do some additional digging. Find out if it's actually on a septic tank, or if they've been annexed and tied into sewer, and now they have an abandoned tank that they're not using. All right, so that goes back to it, right? Red flags. It's another big piece of septic tanks. What you got, Beth?
No, I was just going to mention in different areas you sell different things, and we sell a lot of land up here because every time somebody visits, they think they're going to build a dream home.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to sell the piece of land, we have to get a septic permit for it, and we actually have to do the footwork to get it done so that the septic permit comes in before closing. So you do have to know a lot about how septic.
Who's making you get the septic permit?
The buyers are always from out of state, and so the buyer's agent ends up doing the footwork for them to meet with the county people and mark where the house is potentially going to be. And yeah, I've dug pits to help people get permits.
There you go. So yeah, the buyer is doing that as part of their due diligence, right? You don't need a septic permit to list a piece of land, but yeah, a lot of buyers will make sure they do that as part of their due diligence to ensure that they can get a septic and or municipal water source or a well out there. Absolutely, yeah.
You don't have to get it to list it, but you have to get it to sell it. The buyers won't close
Unless you have that. Yep.
They'll be able to get a septic permit.
Absolutely. Folks, we got about 5 minutes left. Okay. Another fun-filled, fantastical day. Thank you for not having any mental breakdowns today, right? I appreciate you, right? And I didn't have one either. I think we're all starting to feel a little bit better about everything, right? And it's going to continue to get better. I promise. This is only week 1 of many. So here's the deal. A couple people were asking, if you need the link or you have trouble, you can email me, but try your best to get into that Google Classroom, because what I will do tonight, when I finish editing yesterday's video, I will upload it into YouTube and provide you a link so you can rewatch yesterday's video. And then when I get done editing today's video, probably tomorrow, I'll upload it. But like I said, even if you can't get in, you want to get access to the video, I have a couple profiles on YouTube, but I just don't use them that much. It's just a couple random videos and informative things. So you will see, it'll be easy to find. If you just type my name into YouTube, my picture will show up on one of the profiles, and it'll say pre-licensing January, day 1, and that'll be y'all. And you'll hear your names and all that jazz. So I'll put the link one more time and show you. Where was it? Google Classroom, right here. So some of you are already, well in here. So if I refresh this, look, you'll see. And some of you are already sharing information too. 29 of you have already made it in here, which is fantastic. So I'll put this link in here one more time to invite you in the chat. But I can always share it with you again later. It's not like this is your only opportunity to get in here kind of thing. It's just a useful place for me to give you some other resources. So I also will put the teacher version of the syllabus in this later tonight when I get a moment as well. Got a couple of things to do immediately after we get done with the class. Excuse me, but I will spend this evening kind of uploading some stuff that I think would be useful. If you got any questions, that's a great place to talk to me. Beth, you still have a question, or is that just from before? Nope, you're still muted. Nelson, you have a question?
No, sorry. I sent a message on the thing.
Oh, okay. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. Understand there is a Google Classroom app, folks. So once you get enrolled in this, you can just download the Google Classroom app, and that way it's just an easy access feed. So that way you don't have to go to a crazy place every time. Once you enroll, whatever email address that you've registered, you just sign in with your email address on the Google Classroom app, and you can get in this. And I have the app too, so that way I get notifications whenever y'all comment and stuff. So I'll take a look at those. Then I'll definitely have time with my kids. They don't. Like I said, it's just the best thing ever. When I come downstairs, they're like, "Are you done working?" All right, so they just latch on to me. Like I said, man, get your license. I'm spoiled. I work from home. All right, I see my kids all day, every day. On my lunch break, there's my kids. In the morning, there's my kids. When I get done working, there's my kids. Which right now is cool. When they become teenagers, I got to get an outside job. I don't think I can handle it. But right now, it's really cool, so. Folks, y'all have been amazing. Thank you for a lovely, lovely day, too. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. I will warn you of this. Don't ask me personal situational questions. I can't give you legal advice, right? My such and such is selling a home and doing this, and I want to know if I can't give you advice like that. I'm not an attorney. I could answer questions about how things actually work, but I just am not really allowed to give you advice like that. So if you've got questions about school stuff, testable stuff, or even what happens next, I'll give you that. Just don't try to pit me against another real estate agent. My knowledge is better than theirs, I promise it, but I can't help you because I'm not an attorney. I can't give you legal advice. I can't violate a lot of rules and code of ethics and all kinds of stuff. So, how should we set up a Zoom or class study group? Folks, Zoom is free. So you can create a free account, and one of you can just share a Zoom link, a personal Zoom link into Google Classroom so the rest of you can join. As long as you don't go over, I think it's like 40 people and 2 hours straight, it's free. They'll only ask you to get a paid account if you hit certain thresholds. Is it 40 minutes? Yeah. So one of you create a free Zoom account, right? You have one anyway because you created one to join here. So all you got to do is go to Zoom. Let me just show you this real quick, and then I'll let you go. If you look at Zoom, like here is mine. If you look right here under my personal meeting ID and you click that, copy invitation. That's all you got to do. Log into Zoom on the app on the computer. Click my personal meeting ID, copy invitation, send it. Tell everybody a time, and you, whoever is the host, open it up at that time. Everybody else can join. It's easy. So easy. Folks, y'all have a great day. It's been a blasty blast and a half. Please study, read, okay? Next Saturday, we'll do it all over again. Same bat time, same bat channel.